flag. I don't think we're any better at this than we were the last time we met, but we'll give it a shot. Here we go. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United
United
States
States of America,
and to the republic
which it stands,
one nation,
nation,
under
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice
for all.
We can get better at that over time. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the the May 2020 full BET meeting. We actually have a meeting within a meeting today. We have to open up a public hearing for the Cdbg for fiscal year 2020. Can I get a motion that we open the public hearing for that?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Raymer, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Krumick. That'll open up the public hearing. Just if I can, just a little sort of a setup. Friday afternoon was a little bit rushed to get the agenda. The public hearing we'll keep that open until we get done with. I'm going to ask to switch items 3 and 5, our non-routine and our routine. I'm going to ask for a motion to swap those. The public hearing will leave open through the routine application, and then we'll close it before we go into that. Then what we'll have is we'll actually have the item, which is CD1. After that, we'll have reports, committee reports, and discussion on that. Normal public hearing etiquette, if somebody puts up their hand, I've asked Karen to sort of help. We'll just kind of put them on hold, and then we'll get through with one item, and then we'll get back to them. We'll ask speakers to stay within their 2 minutes. And obviously the public hearing is on the community development block grant application for fiscal year 20. I think when we get to that, there might be some modification. Oh, David Weisbrod's here. Hang on one second. David is joining us, so he should be here in a second. Oh, there he is. So we'll move from that. So if I can I get a motion to take up our switch items 3 and 5, take up our routine application ahead of our non-routine application? Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Raymer, seconded by Ms. Hess has her hand up. Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
You need
Okay.
to do a roll call vote.
Well, you now,
No?
Okay. Mr. Drake, would you call a roll call vote on the motion to amend the agenda?
Sure. Ms. Cruiser,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Ms. Krumick,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington,
Leslie, you're muted.
Yes.
Mr. Mason.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Fastliotis,
Yes.
Mr. Raymer,
yes.
Mr. Deuce,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
That was unanimous.
Thank you, everyone. That does bring us to our routine application HD5. I would call on Ms. Tarkin to get the item moved in before us. I am going to ask for a committee report on this as being in the Zoom world. It's not as easy, so I will call for a committee report on that. So Ms. Tarkington, I'll call on you for HD5.
Yes, this is an application to accept crisis response funding for COVID-19 reimbursement of $17,855.96. And it's broken down into 5 detailed categories in terms of the expenses. Do you want me to read that part of the application? The details of the expenses?
Let's move and get it second, then you can do that in your committee report. Do I have a second on this item?
Second.
Second by Ms. Fastliotis. All those in favor of adding this?
Aye.
item? So I'm going to move into committee report. Ms. Tarkington, on behalf of the Budget Committee.
Yes, again, this was a motion to accept the state COVID-19 reimbursement of $17,856.855.96, and it was broken down into 5 different department expense codes, totaling that amount. Ms. Baisley was present at the meeting to explain that she was accepting the crisis response funding from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention provided through the State Department of Public Health for expenses the Greenwich Department of Health incurred during the time period of January 20th, 2020 to March 31st, 2020. Total expenses for the Department of Health, which includes staff overtime and fringe benefits, spent on COVID-19 response activities and COVID-19 related supplies. Ms. Baisley is always proactive in terms of finding grant money and reimbursement money, and we thank her and her department very much. They've been working she explained the intensity of the work during this period and how they were contacting both the patients that have contracted the disease, as well as any parties that they had touched with one way or another to make sure that the disease didn't spread. We're very grateful to all the help that Ms. Baisley provides all. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Tarkington, one question. That's for account codes 401, 405, 415, and 901. As it appears on our call?
Correct.
Okay. Questions? Okay, Mr. Drake.
Wait, Mr. Mason, I had my hand raised. I just wanted to make a point of clarification only. Ms. Tarkington said that this motion is approval to accept. I just want to clarify that it's an approval to accept and to appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I was on the wrong screen. I didn't see your hand up. I'm looking for people for the public hearing. That's my fault.
Okay.
Okay. Seeing no other hands up, Mr. Drake, would you call the roll for HD5?
Ms. Cruiser,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Ms. Crumick,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington,
Yes.
Mr. Mason.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Costellotis,
Yes.
Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Deuce,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
That was unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Continuing on with our modified agenda, let me just switch over here. Do we have any participants who are here for the public hearing? I see none. Am I missing anything, Ms. Vassilotis? Do I see anybody who's?
No, no one has their hand up. So right now there's nobody for the public hearing.
Okay. Choice of the board. I can leave the public hearing open. Our next item is to move into CD1. If no one has objections, in case somebody does want to chime in, or I can close the public hearing. Your choice.
I would suggest you keep the public hearing open until at least we've heard the application and from our other visitors.
Okay, I would ask that we close the public hearing before we vote. That would be my only, otherwise I'll forget. Okay, with
That would be
that,
fine.
I will call on Ms. Tarkington to move and get up before us item CD1.
Correct. This is,
Can you move the item, please? We'll get it seconded. We'll open it up.
yes, this is an application to accept Cdbg fiscal year 2020 budget for $1,478,008 from the HUD entitlement program, and to apply it to a attached list.
Okay,
And
that's
together, excuse me, Mr. Mason, together with its attached resolution, which also needs to be approved, resolution by the Board of Estimate and Taxation and passing upon the report and the recommendations of the Budget Committee for the year 2020, July 1st, 2020 through June 30, 2021 budget year, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, proposed budget for year 2020, and consolidated plan for 2020 through 2024.
Okay, thank you. The item is moved on behalf of the Budget Committee. I would like to start off before our committee reports and liaison reports. Is Tyler Fairburn here? Is Tyler with us?
I did see his name there.
Yes,
Good morning.
He was
Yes.
moved over to panelists. Tyler, you can start your video if you want. Yeah, thank
I
you.
am here. Thank you.
Good morning, Tyler. This item's before us. It's been through our budget committee. I normally call on committee reports, but if I could you give us a brief overview on this item before us?
Absolutely. This is slightly different this year. This is the annual community development submission for the town's community development block grant entitlement award from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We were notified in March of this year that the town would be receiving $827,850 to be allocated to local nonprofit partners who are doing programs and activities specifically to benefit low and moderate income people. What's a bit unique this year is that this will be also simultaneously submitted with our updated 5-year consolidated plan for community development, which is kind of the overarching guide to how we do the annual allocation process. The other twist this year is that the town was notified in April that as an entitlement community in Connecticut, we received an additional $486,978 in what's called Cdbg CV funding through the CARES Act, which provides funding specifically for community partners who are doing programs and activities to prevent, prepare for, and respond to, is the HUD language, the COVID-19 outbreak. This funding is being made part of our 2020 application process to HUD, so we've included that in here as well. And if I can just add something quickly, and this is something that I thank Ms. Tarkington for bringing to my attention. The resolution that was submitted to the BET by my office references the 2020 budget year. That should really be the 2021 budget year. So this is funding that once approved by the BET and the RTM and then submitted to HUD and approved by HUD would start July 1st of 2020. So there's a reference to in the title, the 2020 budget year. That should really be the 2021 budget year. And in the 5th paragraph of the resolution, the now therefore be it resolved, there's a reference to calendar year 2020. That should be town fiscal year 2021. I apologize for this. It's our HUD year 2020, but that it coincides with the town year 2021. So that was the confusion. I apologize for that.
Thank you very much. Does any member have a problem accepting those two modifications from Tyler? I'm seeing no objection. Okay, that's very good. Okay, thank you, Tyler. Thank you very, very much. Budget committee report is next. Ms. Tarkington.
Yes, this application is for the acceptance and use of the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Entitlement, including reprogram funds and additional Cdbg CB CARES Act allocation of $486,978 for a total anticipated budget of $1,478,008 for Cdbg program year 2021 as described. In addition, it comes together with a resolution, which titles I read earlier. Both Alexis Voulgaris, the chair of the Cdbg committee, and Tyler Fairbairn, its administrator, attended the meeting. There was conversation about the increased amount of the allocation due to the COVID-19 pandemic and organizations receiving the funding, including for public service activities, public facility activities, and Cdbg CB CARES Act activities to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. A motion to change the presented list of recipients failed. The committee voted 3-1-0 to approve the acceptance and use of $1,478,008 in the attached resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. We have our two liaisons who have, for the BET, who have worked on the CDB program. Mr. Weisbrod, Mr. Drake, any additional comments that you have?
No, I don't have anything to add. We ran the process in generally similar way to other years, and Ms. Vulgaris and Mr. Fairburn are our leaders, and I think the outcome was satisfactory.
Yeah, I agree. I just would take the opportunity to compliment both Ms. Bulgaris and Tyler Fairchild for the tremendous work they've done in a difficult year. So thank you both.
No, thank the both of you for the work you've put in on this. Okay, further discussion on the item. Ms. Moriarty,
Yes, Ms. Tarkington identified that the vote at the Budget Committee was 3-1, and I want to comment on why I voted against the grant. I don't intend on voting against the grant to accept it today, but I wanted to express my concern, and I wanted to make an amendment at the proper time for a change to the grant recommendations being given to us. The grant that is before us includes a modification that was made by the first selectman after the committee completed its work. And I understand the first selectman has the ability to make the change, and I recognize that. And typically, I think it's important for us as a board to understand why that change was made. The recommendations as the committee made funded a complete project at Inspirica, a capital project. And the adjustment, and I'm just looking for the dollar amount, but the adjustment made by the first selectman was to split that funding and move some of it, $16,000, over to Ableist for a project that they are doing, which is able to be done in phases. And the concern that I have is that, as you know, with capital projects, you need to sign a contract for the full amount to complete a project, that we're going to be entering into a situation where Inspirica is not able to complete this important project that is partially funded now, and we'll have unspent funds, which could put our grant in jeopardy in future years. The Ableist project, as we understand it, can be phased, and therefore would be able to complete the scope of work that's expected underneath the grant funds that they've been allocated. So I was concerned about this change, that we'd be putting ourselves in a situation where we might risk future funding. Both organizations worthy, and I understand that there are different points of view on this, but I think in this particular case, we should recognize that there could be an impediment for Inspirica to complete their work. And so at the proper time, I do want to make the amendment to modify the grant requests to move that $16,000 from Ableist back to Inspirica.
I see no other hands up. I'll call for that if you would like now, Ms. Murray, that'd be fine. And then I have Mr. Weisbrod followed by Mr. Camillo.
I would, though I'd also think it might be important to hear from the Alexis Vulgaris, the chair of the committee, as well. So hopefully you'll put her on the list and allow her to speak as well. So I do want to make a motion to modify the grant amounts to increase Inspirica's grants under the rehabilitation projects. I've got to make sure I've got the names correctly, please excuse me. On the public facility activities projects, to increase the boiler replacement allocation to $64,000, and to reduce the Ableist ceiling lights project to $78,756. That is a switch of six. So that's the motion.
I would second that motion.
Just to explain that that's a switch of $16,000 between the two entities. The bottom line total for public facility activities remains the same at $696,505.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Moriarty. It's a net bottom line zero difference, correct? Because we can't increase the grant.
That is correct.
And just so you know, before we get into discussion on this, obviously, it's been mentioned that the first selectman has the ability to make changes. So do we. And I'm not sure how many other motions I'm expecting that might come out of this meeting today, but we'll have to see on that. So with that, I have Mr. Camillo's hands up. Where's Mr. Camillo? Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
Mike.
morning.
Mr. Chairman, and everybody. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I want to thank you for just giving me a moment to comment on Ms. Moriarty's motion. The reasoning behind moving $16,000 over from a Stanford-based nonprofit to a Greenwich-based nonprofit was the one in Greenwich. The project budget is $156,000. With this $16,000, the project would be receiving about 60% of its total budget. Taking away the $16,000 from the Inspirica boiler project still leaves them with $48,000 or 75% of that. Now, I know there are some Greenwich residents that use that organization, which is a very good one. I've been there many years ago, touring it as a state rep. But there are also organizations here in town, say like Greenwich Adult Daycare in Coscob, which has almost 50% of their clients from Stanford. Yet every year when they apply for Cdbg funds from Stanford, they've received nothing, 0%. So I think we're being very generous here, and I'm happy with that. But I heard Ms. Moriarty talk about being able to phase it in on the ableist side. But I'm not sure if everybody knows the strain that they've been under in recent years. Speaking about ableists, they were cut significantly during the Malloy years in Hartford, and then this year, due to the COVID-19 virus, I received information that they are in excess of $25,000, $25,400 a week in excess costs due to this, which includes PPE, masks, gloves, gowns, excess cost for groceries, which is $3,750 a week, excess overtime for shelter in place, $13,750. They're hurting right now, and this is they're both great organizations, but we're very generous with nonprofits in Stanford, and we should be. Not always the case, as I found out, and I want to make sure that this nonprofit in Greenwich that serves the developmentally disabled gets as much as they can possibly get, especially under these circumstances that we find ourselves in right now. So I'm very secure in what we did here, and I want to thank Tyler for all his work as always, and the committee for vetting all of these projects. So thank you, and happy to answer any more questions if you have any. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Camillo. I have actually, if I don't see any hands up, I have a question actually for
Mike, I think Alexis wants to speak.
Yeah, I was just going to call her. Actually, my question is directed towards her. Can you bring her over?
I'm over here. Hi, good morning.
Oh, there you are.
She's over.
I can ask you my question now or after, your choice. So we've got a clarification on the date. Talk to us about the dates for this. The critical dates for CDBG.
Okay, so the critical dates are, it needs to arrive at the RTM's door at our June 8th meeting, because it has to be sent to HUD, which did not extend their federal deadline no later than August 14th. So if we do not complete this at our June meeting, we either would have to schedule a special meeting, or worst case, which nobody wants, is we would lose our $1.4 million in funding because we would have failed to submit it in a timely manner to HUD.
Okay, and the RTM's authority in this, I think our authority and the first selectman's authority are similar in modifications. The RTM is it typical for I've been off CDBG for many years, but.
No, it is not typical. The RTM is basically a pass through at that point. We are just acknowledging and moving forward. We have never changed. I don't even know if we have the authority to change. It's never something that we've encountered before.
Okay. Okay. That answers my question. Did you had something else? I think you.
Well, I
were-
wanted to thank, so I first wanted to thank our two BET liaisons, Mr. Weisbrod and Mr. Drake. And I wanted to thank the 30 odd people that are on this committee who work very, very hard for many, many months to put this together. And, you know, it was somewhat of a challenge. We were able to have our public hearing in mid-March, shortly before things got shut down. And then true to form, our committee, you know, rose to the occasion, and via Zoom and conference calls, we were able to meet with almost all of the providers so that we could make well-informed allocations that I think serve the needs of a very marginalized community. We had 22 applications for public service programs. Those are like, you know, regular programs. We started a floor of $5,000. We were able to fund every single one, so everybody got a little bit of money. We had 15 applications for capital. We chose to fund 10. And then we had 20 applications under the special COVID relief, and we chose to fund 12, all exclusively in the area of food and shelter. So that's where we stand.
Okay, thank you. I would hang on, or maybe some more questions. I'm going to run down the hands. Mr. Raymer, I see your hand up.
I only wanted to add that I thought there was a logic, it was referred to by Ms. Moriarty, there's a logic to completing projects in completed phases of it. For the Obelisk project, it's as cited by the first selectman, it's a $156,000 project, but the funds appropriated complete the lighting fixtures and the sensors and the wireless fixtures. The $16,000 gives them a partial funding for another phase that they can't do without raising additional funding to complete that phase. Conversely, for Inspirica, the $64,000 is the project cost for them to replace the boiler. The funding to them of $48,000 gives them most but not all of the money. They can't replace the boiler without raising the additional $16,000 to complete the task. So for each of those two agencies, excellent agencies, both of them, they have partial funding and not the ability to complete their task without raising additional funds. Whereas with the breakout, the way it was proposed by Mrs. Moriarty, it gives each agency an opportunity to complete a task. In the case of Inspirica, they complete the boiler task altogether. In the case of Obelisk, they complete a phase, approximately half of the lighting project, and would move on with other phases at a later time when they've raised the funding or get further funding from Cdbg. So I saw logic in the change. I appreciate the thoughts of the first selectman that one of these agencies is a Greenwich-based agency, the other is located in Stamford. I appreciate also his observation that Stamford is cautious, I'll use the word cautious about funding that it extends to agencies that are located in Greenwich. Nevertheless, we don't have a facility in Greenwich for homeless handling of families or women for that matter either. We rely on that agency. It's not as if we don't generate our own homeless population. There may be resistance in neighborhoods to even having such an agency in Greenwich. I don't know that for sure, but clearly it services a need that we have from our community. And therefore, there's a logic to our extending funding to them. The United Way, by the way, follows the same logic with extending funding to agencies that are located outside of the town. And for those reasons, I plan to vote in favor of the amendment shifting the $16,000. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Raymer. Next hand up is Ms. Krummick.
Yes, I just wanted to refer back to last year when there was a problem with the Housing Authority, and I believe Neighbor to Neighbor and possibly other agencies, where they had not completed their projects. They had not submitted their invoices. there was a real question of whether this whole program was going to be jeopardized if HUD decided that they were going to withhold funding for the next year as a result of the failure of an agency to complete the project. And I'm very concerned here that by taking money from one and putting it into another agency, when what we were trying to achieve was to either complete a phase or complete an entire project, that we may jeopardize the ability of one of those agencies to complete its work, and that could actually jeopardize the overall program. And I'm concerned that the first selectman, I understand he's new to this whole municipal government area, and that this particular program is one that he may not have had as much familiarity with, but I would ask that there be a reconsideration. I support the amendment because I think it really does put in jeopardy the overall program. And I'm very reluctant to make a decision based on what Stanford did or did not fund. I'm also concerned that our first selectman may be mixing up the operating with the capital budgets. I understand that ableists may be experiencing significant expenses on the operating side, but I want to be very careful that we not jeopardize any of these capital projects that the committee had agreed were worthy enough for funding. So I would support the reconsideration and ask the first selectman to reconsider his taking money from one and putting it into another after the committee had actually spent a lot of time reviewing these projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Erickson's hand's up next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question really for Ms. Vulgaris or Mr. Farburn. Is there a risk that Inspirica cannot complete the capital project with the allocated funds of $48,000? Do
Sure.
they need?
So there's
$16,000?
always, so I think that it would be helpful to give you all a little bit of background here and sort of backtrack. So the first thing I want to make sure is that I want to reiterate, I think what Mr. Raymer said, and a longstanding policy of the committee, which is we have always worked cooperatively with our neighbors to help them fund services that we do not provide in Greenwich. So to that end, we have a senior dental program, which is on the list, that it's on our public service. I believe we awarded that $7,000. We have Inspirica and Pacific House. I would encourage all of you, if you haven't already, I'll be happy to send it around. There was a young man who in April was featured. He was a young boy who graduated from Greenwich High, who due to his family circumstances found himself living in the Pacific House shelter system. They recognized that he was very young, and so they actually started a young person's program to sort of separate the youngest residents from the older residents, who are generally significantly older than an 18-year-old. So the philosophy of block grant has always, always, always been to make sure that for our communities who are helping to assist some of our most fragile residents, that we provide them with some funding. For as long as I've been on the committee, we have done this. There have been requests that have come from as far as Fairfield. We have turned those down because we recognize that the likelihood of a Greenwich resident going that far down the line was quite low. But certainly with Stanford, we don't ever want to be in a situation where they are turning away a client or a resident of ours who may be homeless. So that's why we provide it. Now, to get to your earlier question about capital projects, Ms. Crumick alluded to it, and I don't want to belabor it too much, but we have had problems with what are known as HUD timeliness standards. There's certain requirements that are submitted that we have to spend down our money in a timely way. Failure to do so can put us in jeopardy of losing the block grant. And last year, I think half of the BET was working on this with me. We almost lost $500,000 in funding because one of our applicants had too much money outstanding. They weren't closing out projects in a timely manner. As a way of offsetting that and making sure that we don't do that again, because I think we can all agree that losing $500,000 or $600,000 of block grant money is not good. We've really moved to a place where capital projects are either fully funded or fully funded in phases. This is a unanimous decision by the committee. It is not my decision, it is unanimous by the committee. So, in the case of Inspirica, it's not clear to me if they can raise $16,000. I'm sure if you asked Inspirica, they will say, of course we can raise $16,000, because their fear is that if they say they can't raise $16,000, that you're gonna take the remaining 75% that you've allocated, right? So as I've explained to everybody, I think we'll have to wait until next May when the receipts are due to see if they can, in fact, complete that request. If they had the cash on hand, they wouldn't have asked for the grant, okay? It's complicated. I don't mean to, it's just complicated. I'm happy to talk with anybody who wants to talk about it. So the ableist is a little less intuitive to me. They've come to us with a 3-phase project. We fund the largest of the 3 phases. The $16,000 leads to partial funding of 2 phases. And I don't understand, honestly, where that's going. I just don't. It's not my decision to make. I understand that that rests with the first selectman. That is not the position that the committee generally takes. We like to have it neat and clean and tidy, and we like to minimize risk. And in our view, again, unanimously, the best way to minimize risk is you either fund a capital project in its entirety or you fund a phase of that capital project in its entirety. And that's the initial package we created based on that.
Thank you. Ms. Moriarty, did you have your hand up and put it down?
I did. I wanted to hear the explanation from the committee, but Ms. Voulgaris just provided that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Camillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to thank Ms. Crumick for acknowledging that I am new in this position, but I can assure I don't know a lot of things, but I do know the difference between a capital and an operating expense. I did speak with Tyler about this, and he did ask them about their ability, Inspirica, to come up with that last 25%, and he was confident enough, and I think we should ask him, Tyler, about his conversation with them, and I was satisfied with that they would be able to do that. Again, we are funding 75% of a project there. When again, as Mr. Raymer did concede the point that we get very little, in most cases, nothing from our neighbor to the north, which is a great city. I love Stamford. I have relatives there, and I get along very well with the mayor, and I know they have lots of expenses there. But you know, whether it's a capital or operational issue, lots of these nonprofits have trouble. And this is one here in Greenwich, Connecticut, that serves the developmentally disabled. And I spoke with the person who runs it, and I asked the same questions, you know, what the $16,000 would do to them. And they were extremely grateful to get it, because it will help them dramatically, significantly at this time. But if I was, even though I'm not happy that, you know, we don't get that much money from our neighbor, if I knew that if I had any thoughts that this project wouldn't get done, obviously I wouldn't have made that decision. But I think we need to ask Tyler that same question and see what they said, what the answer was to him, and what his thoughts were on that.
Thank you. I see no other hands up. I'm going to, this is sort of not our norm. We do have a hand up in the public hearing by one of the attendees. I'll switch screens. And it is a public hearing. Obviously, with people who speak at our public hearing, we normally don't engage in debate with them. They want to share a point on something. So I see no other discussion on Moriarty motion to amend, if I've got that correct. So let me just click over here. And Karen, can you, we're going back into our public hearing mode for a minute. Can you take care of that for me?
I've unmuted Mike Basham so he can speak if he so desires.
Thank you, Karen. I just wanted to address the point that the first selectman made. I am vice president of River House, Greenwich Adult Daycare Center, and there is not an equivalent institution in the town of Stamford. As a result, probably almost 45% of our clientele comes from Stamford. We get financial assistance from the town, from the Cdbg grants. We got some of the most recent COVID-19 grant money as well. But like most nonprofits, we're struggling right now. We've had to cancel our major fundraiser, and that's not so much the issue. It's just I wish that we could receive the same level of reciprocity from Stamford that we've been generous. We've been very generous with the town of Stamford. Obviously, as I listened to this, they've gotten a series of grants over the years from our block grant money. We've never received a dime from Stamford, and I don't want to punish anyone, but I would love to see some level of reciprocity from them in terms of what we're doing at Greenwich Adult Daycare Center. And if we have to shift monies from some of the institutions, and by the way, I understand that we do not have a comparable facility in town, and it probably is appropriate for us to provide some level of support because we probably do have citizens that make use of that facility. But again, I would love to see the same level of reciprocity from Stamford. I don't know what we as an institution or we as a town body can do about that. But any help that anybody on this call or on this meeting could provide us, that would be tremendous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, back to, let me just click a button here. I see no other hands. So I'm going to call this the Moriarty motion to amend, if that's okay, and I'll ask Mr.
Mike, you still need to close the public hearing before you do that. But Mr. Weisbrod also has his hand up.
Oh, okay, Mr. Weisbrod first.
So let me understand. The committee that Alexis, and maybe we do need to hear from Tyler, the committee that Alexis and Tyler have devoted hours and hours to, and that Mr. Drake and I are liaisons to, has come up with a recommendation to complete a capital project that, if it isn't completed, could potentially, have jeopardy for the program and the funding for the program down the road. A project where many people from Greenwich benefit because Greenwich has no comparable facility. It's my understanding, and maybe Tyler or Alexis can comment on this, there's really been no precedent that I'm aware of where there's been intervention either by the BET or the first selectman to reject the recommendation that the volunteers on this committee have toiled over for hours and hours, and there's no precedent for doing that. The argument that there is so-called reciprocity sounds to me like a bit of horse trading in the middle of a pandemic. It's unseemly. It does not sit well with me. Obviously, Ableist is an outstanding organization. No one denies that. And obviously, Inspirica is as well. But what's involved here is a process that we have adhered to over many, many, many years to allocate these funds, and that has stood us well over many years. And I really am struggling truly to understand why we would depart from the care, the thoughtfulness, and the dedication that the volunteers on this committee have displayed over the years. It just has not been persuasive to me. So I wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weisbrod. Ms. Tarkington?
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment since I've heard multiple members of our committee make the comment. The first selectman always holds a public hearing after the committee has made a decision. And then that first selectman has the opportunity to make changes. The current first selectman has done that, but so did our previous first selectman, Mr. Tessie, do that. So I want to just, clarify that this is not without precedent. It certainly is with precedent. And, the first selectman has held a public hearing, as has been done in the past, and the first selectman has the right to make a decision. So I just wanted to make sure that people understood that some of the information provided has been incorrect. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tarkington. Okay, I see no other hands up. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Seconded by Mr. Raymer. Okay, all those in favor, or do I need a roll call vote on this?
Yes. I would think you by unanimous consent, if people are think that way, to close the public hearing.
Okay.
Anybody
Okay.
opposed?
I see no hands up. Okay, then our public hearing is closed. So that brings us back to I see no other hands, the Moriarty motion. Any other questions by any of our members? Okay, so Mr. Drake, the vote will be on the Moriarty motion to amend.
That's right. So if, for those voting yes, that is a vote to amend the CDBG allocations, really putting them back to where they were when the committee made them before Mr. Camillo changed them. Ms. Cruiser,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
No.
Ms. Crumick,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington,
No.
Mr. Mason.
No.
I'm a no. Ms. Fasliotis,
No.
Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Deuce,
No.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
So that vote for the moment is 6-6, and the amendment does not pass.
That brings us back to, that motion does not pass. That brings us back to our original motion and back to discussion on the original CDBG. Do you have any further discussion? I would like to offer a comment before I call for a vote. We're fortunate that the numbers that we have to allocate this year are going up. I think that's phenomenal. That's the number we used to have when I was serving on CDBG, and it's been dwindling and dwindling, and all these programs need it. And I'm glad we're getting it, and I'm hoping we're going to get everything to the RTM in a proper timeline, and that it goes through, because these agencies need the help, and especially in the times that we're in right now. So this item would be, so we're clear on the vote, is CD1, $1,478,008, approval to use as amended with the dates. Seeing
No amendment. Oh,
discussion.
yes. Right. Sorry.
Okay. I just want to make sure with those amended dates. Mr. Drake, can you call for the vote on this item?
Okay, so this is a vote on the CDBG allocation. A vote yes is to confirm the receipt and the appropriation. Ms. Cruiser,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Ms. Crumick,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington,
Yes.
Mr. Mason.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Fasliotis,
Yes.
Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Deuce,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
That was unanimous support.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. That brings us to item number 6, the assessor's report. And if Karen will just move Miss Elliott over, we'll get going.
Okay, she's over.
Good morning. You just have to here she is.
Got it. Okay, good morning, everyone. Members of the BT, I'd like you to present the May 2020 Assessors Report. Currently, I have the staff members coming in. We're staggering most of the days. We have just a few people here every other day, and it's been working out fairly well. As far as the seniors and disabled program, so we were under the impression for the longest time that the local program would not be extended. And on May 6th, we did get an executive order that says that the local program would be extended as well. However, we did end up getting a majority of the seniors and the disabled in by what was the original May 15th deadline. I think we just have less than 20 that we are still outstanding, and we're working with those folks, and hopefully we'll get them in the next week or so. So we've been basically just focusing on getting the seniors in and getting their information, and it's gone quite well. Anybody have any questions for me this morning?
I see no hands. If you could, can you explain to me on your report that item number 1, it's under normal workload, but that building permit chart, can you explain that?
Okay. The reason why I put that there is that the building permit chart basically how we gauge our new construction and what we're going to actually get for our next year's growth. The reason why I put that there is I wanted you all to see that the value of the building permits has significantly gone down in the last couple of months, and that may or may not affect our growth next year. We'll see how the following months, but usually at this time of year in April and May, we see a much larger increase in building permits pulled. So that's there just to kind of give you a heads up as to what may be happening come this fall. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Erickson.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Lauren. I just had a question about the possibility of postponing the 2020 reval, and I'm wondering, what are you thinking in terms of your parameters for making that decision? Broad strokes.
Well, it doesn't seem like the town is opening up as quickly as we would have thought in March. So at this point, I think I said we would be making a determination sometime next month in June as to whether or not we will go forward with it. At this point in time, unless something significantly changes, it's going to, if we had to do it this fall, it will be quite tight and quite difficult for us to do. So keep that in mind.
If I could just follow up, is that because, for example, the remaining inspections that are outstanding, is it the tight timeline for the commercial evaluation of income and expense reports? Sort of what's driving, other than the obvious pandemic we're living under?
It's both of them. It's both of those. It's the residential inspections as well as, just because we're doing a reevaluation doesn't, we also have to do our new as well. So we have those permits to do. We also we have about 1,600 or so houses we still have left to measure and list. And we also have the income and expense that are not due until August. And I've been keeping track of those. And I think we have less than 100 that have come in so far. So that's certainly indicative of making this revaluation very difficult to do if we're going to do it in this October in 2020.
Thank you.
Mr. Raymer.
Following up on Ms. Erickson's question, Lauren, if you don't mind, what about the integrity or quality of the revaluation, comparing what you think it would be like over the next 5 years if we dealt with one that we did for October 1st this year, as opposed to preparing one for October 1st next year?
Well, if I did it as of October 1st, 2021, I will have been able to actually be able to determine what effect this COVID-19 had on property values. I'll have another 1.5 years of sales, and that will actually help us have values that would probably be a bit more defensible for the next 5 years versus doing it now. I may or may, if you noticed, we actually will just have a lot of we'll have very few sales in which to determine what the effect of COVID is. We will only have basically June, July, August sales. Any of the sales that have happened as of March and April probably were under contract before all of this hit. So if I do it in 2021, I will have values that are much more defensible and that will also have the COVID issue in those values. We'll know what happened to the real estate market. So.
I see no other hands. Can I get a motion to accept the?
So moved. I move that we accept the report.
Moved by Mr. Second by Mr. Raymer.
Leslie, did you have your hand up for any other purpose? I'm sorry.
No, just to
Okay.
make the motion to accept.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Discussion. Do I have all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mike, can you just ask for those that are opposed and just accept by unanimous consent?
Okay. Anybody opposed? Then the assessor's report will be accepted. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to our comptroller's report. Mr. Minarski's here on the.
Good morning, everyone. Peter Minarski presenting the Controller's Report. I'll make a series of comments throughout the Controller's Report in reference to section, and then I'll double back and I'll take any questions. On page 1, it's noted under the annual budget process that we're going to be opening up to essential employees May 27th in Town Hall and to the public June 1st, which is tentative. The importance of me putting this into the Controller's Report is because it has a direct impact on the BET, and it looks like the conference room, whether it's the Gisborne or the Town Hall meeting room in the Mazza, is going to be closed for your access, and you'll be conducting Zoom meetings throughout the summer. On page 2, I'm happy to report that Matrix is still on schedule. They've finished all their interviews. They've done the town profile, which was distributed. And it looks like they're going to have a draft report this week, hopefully, to the 4 members of the BET Steering Committee. On page 3, under Retirement Board, as it's been publicly noted, one of the trustees, the former police captain, Mr. Kordick, is no longer a trustee, and the Retirement Board has reached out to the active members who could run accepting nominations, and we'll have to have an election. Noted in the Controller's Report is we do not do that in the past electronically, so we have to wait until May 27th so that people have access to the appropriate buildings. In the past, we used the library besides Town Hall, so we're still trying to work out the logistics of having the election to replace the 5th trustee. Page 4, COVID-19 reimbursements. Mehgan Zaneski, the risk manager, is in charge of the reimbursements. You saw a piece where the health department on the agenda earlier got reimbursed $17,000. We tracked that expense, and we also tracked the reimbursement to zero it out. Of note is we have a team together, and there are other reimbursements beside the FEMA reimbursements. 2 examples are unemployment. We expect a spike in the unemployment insurance claims. We're self-insured, and the stimulus program will reimburse us 50% of those unemployment claims. The extra piece, the $600 extra piece, has nothing to do with the state or local municipalities. That will basically go to the federal government, to the state, and reimburse them. And then there's another piece on the federal, the FMLA. We will get reimbursements for the employer FICA portion of those people that have COVID-19 related health issues and are out on sick leave. And page 5, the internal auditor, we've reposted the position, and we're still looking for an internal auditor. And finally, there's one piece of information I'd like to repeat from previous BET budget and BET meetings. Maureen Tracy did a canvas as far as unpaid outstanding bills, and we went through all of the areas that are out there. We found that the Public Works is current. Mathenia Witherall, because of their turnover, fell a little bit behind, but now they've brought themselves current. Public schools are current. And we did find one pocket, Parks and Rec has lagged behind, and they have about $225,000 of invoices that are outstanding. So I'll go back all the way to page 1 and I'll entertain any questions in the controller's report.
Ms. Moriarty.
Yes, just in reference to your last comment about outstanding invoices, I know that you're tracking and continue to estimate where fund balance might be at the end of the year. We talked about it at the budget committee with the run rate being lower than what we experienced in fiscal 19. Just wanted to confirm, based on your new information on invoices, you're still expecting fund balance to be about flat to last year. Is there any line item that would change your feeling about that?
Audited last year was 62.8 million, and I rounded that up. The answer is still the same at this point. One more point, just to the question in the answer about invoices being current. We're open. We run a police department, fire department, Parks and Rec, and we have people paying the bills in town hall. A lot of services are not open. So to that question about invoices outstanding, we don't have a feel if the vendors are lagging behind whether it's Staples or any other office supplies, et cetera. But we also did check the larger payments like the healthcare to the state and the utility bills, and they're all current. But to answer your question is, as of right now, and as of last week, we're still looking at that 63 million in the general fund.
I'd like to ask one other question, and you may not have the information readily available. You can get back to us. But there's been a lot of discussion over healthcare expenses and what we're experiencing this year and what we're expecting next year. I think in the latest run rate report, healthcare is expected to underrun the budget by about $1.8 million. I don't have a feel whether that number is larger or smaller than prior years. That would be good information to have, and to know whether, as you calculated your fund balance for this year, whether you're assuming the full 1.8 million or whether it was based on a different number. And the reason I'm asking is because as we look forward to the fiscal 21 budget, one of the assumptions that was made when the budget was adopted that there'd be a $900,000 reduction in healthcare expense due to a premium change. But since then, we've gotten additional information about different expenses that might increase the healthcare expense. So I'm just trying to work through the experience we're having with healthcare expense this year versus what we're assuming for fiscal 21.
Okay, is the couple questions there. As far as the answer is yes, that was part of the factor, one of the factors that goes into the flat to 63 million. I factored in between 1 and 2 million a few weeks ago as far as the healthcare return. Roland could probably answer off the top of his head about what's been returned 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years ago. But as noted, one of the issues we had a $900,000 cut to the healthcare, and then actually the day that you had the 10-hour meeting when you were voting on the budget, Roland got news through the HR department from the state that there was going to be an increase from October 1 to June 30th, 9/12 of the year, which basically was the 900,000. So to follow up next year, that surplus will be impacted. So that let's say that there was $1 million surplus this year that we ended up with. We've got that $900,000 surplus no longer exists for 2021. So that would have a slight impact on the fund balance for June 30th, 21. But there's too many unknowns right now is to try to guess at a number. Too many revenue unknowns, too many reimbursements from the federal government and state unknowns, FEMA, et cetera, and expense unknowns. For example, one of the biggest surplus questions is the Board of Education, which is experiencing surplus monies for this fourth quarter due to the school contract, the substitutes, et cetera. Hypothetically, if these schools do not open in time, you've got built-in surpluses there. But as far as 2021, it's too many unknowns to even attempt to guess at surplus or deficit.
Okay.
Miss, are you done, Mrs. Moriarty?
I am, although also always with his answers, you have 5 more questions, but I'll stop there.
That is true. Miss Erickson.
Yes, thank you, Pete. Just 2 quick questions. Just to clarify the FEMA reimbursement for Superstorm Sandy, I think I read in 2 different places we were hoping to get it by June 30th, but for obvious reasons that reimbursement will be delayed. Can you just remind us of the range of the reimbursement we're expecting when it comes through?
It's between 1 million and 1.5 million.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question is, I think really just a clarification on the audit section of the report on page 5. The update is really we've changed the order to start with the Holly Hill disposal facility and then try to do the marina. Is that correct? Right now it reads that we're trying to do the activity fund and the Dorothy Hamill skating rink, but I think we've changed our plan given the circumstances.
Actually, this is the BET meeting and not the internal audit meeting. Is we switch gears on the working with the management at the Board of Education. We could smoothly go in and do the student activities fund. That's been started. We tried the marinas, but we got backed up because they opened up about 2 weeks ago, and they're engaging in setting all new protocols down there. So we didn't want to bother them and move them to number 3. And number 2 is the rink, because the rink shut down seasonally a couple of weeks ago, and they would be number 2. As far as the transfer station, a couple issues came up with Bloom Shapiro in this area of the scope. So I've been working with the town administrator and, more importantly, Amy Seabird. We're going to go to the audit committee, and we want to tweak the scope on the transfer station. And one of the main reasons is that there's not as much revenue that's expected there. And we want to present as a possibility monitoring the tipping fees over a 6-month period or less, so that July 1st, when you start collecting the $90 to $100, whatever it is, a ton tipping fee, it would be more appropriate to audit it under the new system where you have the tipping fees. Otherwise, you would be doing an audit of a system, a pre-existing system that's dramatically different than what's going to be happening July 1st. But that's really an issue that I'm going to present with the Commissioner of Public Works at the Audit Committee meeting in a couple of weeks. So to answer your question, yes, is we retweaked what was most convenient as far as trying to get audits done.
Great. Thank you for the update, Pete. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I see no other hand up. Mr. Drake.
I noticed, Pete, that we're opening town hall to the employees on May 27th and to the public on June 1st, but the BET not for months. So I guess that's an indication of just how essential we are to the smooth operation of the
Are you saying that was a hint from town hall to us? Okay. Seeing no other hands, can I get a motion, or unless I have any negatives, can I assume?
I move that we accept the controller's report.
Okay. Seconded by Mr. Raymer. I see nothing negative. I'll assume that's a 12-0 vote. Thank you, Peter. And Peter, I just thank you. I mean, I know you and Roland and the team have been there doing all kinds of work. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see, treasurer's report. Let me just scroll down. Any member have any questions or information on the treasurer's report? Can I get a
I move that we accept the treasurer's report.
move seconded by Mr. Raymer? Discussion? Do I have any negative votes or abstentions on accepting that?
I have an abstention.
Okay, I have one abstention. Do I have any negative votes? Then I assume the accepting the treasurer's report would be 1101. Am I correct?
Yes.
Thank you, thank you. Standing committee, I had checked off the human resources boxes, but I wasn't sure because it was Friday afternoon, so I don't have anything there. Nathaniel Witherell Board, I think Mr. Deuce has a quick update, or Mr.
That's a quick update. Okay. Thank you. At the beginning of this month, John Mastronardi joined the Nathaniel as its new executive director. Previously he had been the administrator for the Montefiore Schaefer Skilled Nursing Facility in New Rochelle. Very happy to have him on board finally. With his arrival, the acting executive director, Joanne Kotulski, who had worked with us for about 3.5 months, departed. She had been engaged through HCG and served us very, very capably in that role. And she may be available for some follow-up guidance hereafter for a limited period of time. Lots of challenges. We still have lots of openings in the senior ranks, including Director of Finance, Director of Nursing, the Business Service Coordinator. And hopefully John will be making some inroads to getting those positions filled. The current census is 136. That's versus total beds of 202 and versus a normal occupancy of 189. It's down in part because they've not been accepting any new admissions for the last couple of months for obvious reasons. We've been very fortunate. They've been very good. The number of residents who have tested positive for COVID-19 or have been symptomatic has been as high as 34. The current number has dropped to about 3. This past week, Nathaniel has reinstituted a new admissions process, which, as I said, has been on hiatus for 2 months. And they're being very cautious appropriately. They're going to limit admits to previous COVID-19 patients who are being discharged from either Stanford or Greenwich hospitals and who have had 2 negative tests for COVID-19 and do not have an elevated temperature for at least 3 days prior to admission. And after they're admitted, they're going to wait another 14 days in quarantine inside Nathaniel. And subject to this new protocol, they admitted their first patient this past Thursday. So hopefully we'll reach the bottom and they'll start rebuilding census there. They continue to receive some additional monies that we had not anticipated before COVID-19. The Medicare and Medicaid rates have been raised. They've gotten also, they'll be getting some reimbursement from Fema for 75% of their COVID-19 expenses. And ultimately they'll have to make a presentation to the Budget Committee for our approval. No surprise, the new executive director is reviewing all contracts, staffing costs, and has been carrying out interviews for filling in these open senior positions. I think we owe Larry who together with Joanne our thanks for managing through a crisis that we've not seen for 100 years. And we've gotten through this, well, I haven't gotten through it, but we've managed as well as we could possibly expect over the last couple of months. Beth and I, Beth's the other liaison, expect to attend their monthly meeting scheduled for later this afternoon. And if we learn anything further, we'll report back to the BET. Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Drake?
Just real quickly, say one more time, please, Andy, the census number, and what does that represent as a percentage decline from the typical census and coincident with the reduction of revenues is there the possibility of reduction of personnel expenses? So far as you know?
Well, typical is 189. If you take 136 divided by 189, that's a percentage reduction. And I could do that, or someone would beat me to it.
I'll do it.
It's significant. We know that.
Okay. And
We're at 72%.
yeah, so now you normally think you can reduce personnel, but the challenge is we still have overtime expenses. These things are lumpy, and it's not so easily done to reduce staff. And that's clearly an area of focus for the new executive director. He's been there a couple of weeks now, and we'll learn more. Beth and I will learn more today at the board meeting, and hopefully we'll have a more robust report for you guys next month on progress on that front. It's been disappointing so far.
Thank you. Any, Mr.
I see Beth's hand.
Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to add that they did have a quarantine area, and my guess is that they had to increase the staffing for that COVID-19 quarantine area. And my understanding is that many of those patients have now moved back to their normal rooms.
Yeah, so we have 3 patients still in quarantine, and as we admit new patients, they'll go through a 2-week quarantine period for them as well. So this will be a moving target. It will continue to be challenging even as we slowly emerge from the pandemic.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Just to correct the record, it was more like in the 20%, not the 2%, Jeff. I think you got your decimal point off as far as the reductions.
Thank you, Karen.
We'll stick with Beth's number, significant. That was better. Let's see. Labor contracts, I believe there's probably some conversations going on in town that our labor contracts liaisons should be getting a call from to, if needed, to talk about that. I'm not sure. Fire study, the controller obviously gave us an update on that, and we'll look forward to that. Item 12, I put tipping fee discussion, although I think we might have had it under the controls report. I put this on there. You know, does anybody have any questions? It begins July 1. DPW is going to implement this. Our DPW, who are our DPW liaisons?
It's Leslie Tarkington and myself.
Can I beg of the two of you to kind of keep us in the loop? Because we have a July meeting and sort of how this is working. Because once it starts, there's going to be a lot of questions in the public. I think we want to be sort of familiar on, at least have some of the basic answers, how it's working and how it goes from there. Can I ask the two of you to maybe follow up on that? Because that's a pretty new initiative in town.
Certainly. And I don't know, at one point we had this conversation on decision day that reverting to the prior year budget for the waste disposal division may be an issue. So we may want to talk further with the Commissioner of Public Works about that. And because I think the proposal with pay as you throw was less waste disposal and more recycling, but now it looks like that shift may not happen, but we will have additional revenue. So I think we do need to make some adjustments.
Okay, again, I leave it to our liaisons to, please bring that back accordingly.
Leslie, you're on mute. Leslie, you're on mute.
Yeah, I would just like to add that that we may not require that to be done quite this early. We, have some flexibility to see the beginning, the implementation, but we'll certainly keep you informed and we'll be on top of it. Thank you.
Okay. I didn't put anything under new business. I had a couple things under the chair's report, but I'll bring them up now if you don't mind. I'm looking at a special meeting on the 12th of June for setting the mill rate. The reason I'm looking for that, and we haven't gotten feedback from Heather yet, is we are led to believe, you can't say this is 100% factual, that on the close of the 15th, she needs everything bundled to send out for the invoicing. I could be wrong on this. Please excuse me if I am. But
Mike, can I just interrupt? I did have a conversation with Heather, not recently, but initially when we were talking about extending the final budget date. when her drop dead date was, and she indicated that it was close of business on the 15th.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question to her. I haven't yet heard back from her as to whether that's a firm date or whether it could be extended to the 16th. But initially she said no, that the drop dead date was the 15th.
Okay. So you've heard that. So just kind of keep it in mind. I'll circulate an email. And then the other thing is our full BET meeting is on the 15th. I haven't picked a time yet. As you know, that we'll have to do an extension of electronic, whatever we call it, meetings at that date for probably for a while. But also, I just don't have a time on that yet. I'm waiting to confirm a few things on that date. But I'll get that out as soon as I possibly can. And the other thing is, obviously, we'll work on the district meetings coming up. Chair's report, I'll skip that. Approval of BET minutes, Mr. Drake.
Mike, before you go to that, David had his hand up.
I'm sorry, did not see it. Mr. Weisbrod.
Oh, thank you, Karen. Thank you, Mike. Just housekeeping. I have another board meeting on the 15th in the morning. We had scheduled this BET meeting on the 15th for the evening, which is fine. So I just wanted to alert you to that. It's housekeeping. Sorry.
Okay, and I'll make a note of that right away. Again, just so everybody understands, the IT department has relinquished support for Zoom meetings, not for us, not for the Board of Selectmen or for the RTM, but for all the other groups out there. So we're okay. The reason we've been moving our meetings to daytime is because it all closes at 4 o'clock, and obviously a lot of things we're doing, Peter and Roland and may need documents, and it's hard to do that remotely. That's why we've been doing that. So again, I think it's just communication to make it work. That's all. Any other hands up? Okay, Mr. Drake, can I call?
Actually, before minutes, just one other comment, only because these meetings keep changing. I would like to ask if you could, when you arrive on a tentative time, if you could circulate it just before you post the meeting to see if there are conflicts for our members.
I believe I didn't do that just one time, and I think my challenge was, we have to follow our committee meetings, and I.
Right, just going forward, I think there's so much in flux, and people's schedules are open, but they're not open. So I know that you've done it in the past, so I just wanted to.
No, I truly appreciate that. I mean, some of us are waiting for the barbershops to open because that's going to be a priority. Look at Roland laughing. Wait a minute, that wasn't funny, Roland. Okay, minutes, Mr. Drake.
We have several sets of minutes, and this isn't easy with Zoom, but we're all trying to do our best to incorporate everyone's edits. So let's be tolerant of each other. I know you are. There's 6 sets of minutes posted, and they're in your package, and they were provided to everybody over the period May 10th to 12th with an invitation of comments May 13th, except for the long set of the decision day, which was posted on the 13th. That was a long and big effort by Kathy. And then after they were posted by Elaine, Leslie Moriarty made some edits to 5 of the sets, and Jeff edited the 6th set. But since track changes was turned off, the edits by Leslie and Jeff couldn't be identified. And then Leslie, yesterday at noon, I'm sure hustled to provide them in Word with track changes. So all of this is coming a little bit late. So just in order that everyone can properly see and approve all the edits in a deliberative, thoughtful way, I would propose that we collect all the changes in the normal process on OneDrive with track changes on, and take them up next month. By the way, Beth provided minor comments to the March 16th and the April 20th, and that small changes are fine. And she noted them in track changes, and she left them on OneDrive, so they were clear to everyone. So we should all give Beth a hand of applause for probably working the system. It worked great. if everybody could do that, it would be, we'd all see them in the proper manner on OneDrive where everyone's comments are visible. So my recommendation is that we defer these 6 sets. The most recent changes were delivered at noon yesterday. I know Leslie Moriarty probably hustled to do that. But in order for everyone to have a proper time to deliberate over them and get them right, it's my recommendation to postpone them another month, and we'll get the changes properly visible to everyone.
Bill, did you want everyone to give Beth a round of applause?
Yes.
And to use OneDrive, or both?
No.
She used OneDrive, did it perfectly. She deserves a hand.
Miss Moriarty's hands is up.
Yes, first, the question I had on the March 16th meeting minutes, I don't have that question anymore. If the body would like to move and act on the March 16th minutes, I think those are ready. Secondly, I do want to just post the concern that the minutes for the April 27th decision day meeting, the 10-hour meeting, clearly a difficult meeting to write those minutes for, were never circulated to the full BET prior to posting subject for approval. And I believe there are mistakes in those meetings. They're not complete. And so I just wanted to identify that I thought that we varied from our typical process here, and it's not good for our body and for our board to have those minutes being posted for the public when they haven't even been reviewed by any member other than Bill of this board.
And thanks, Leslie. I appreciate that. And you're right. They were a very long set. Kathy Sidora has the hard duty, and she created them and got them, frankly, to me on May 12th. I turned them around in 24 hours and posted them. That was the only set that as you say, we couldn't get to everyone because I thought it would be best to put them to post them on the 13th so that everyone's comments would be invited, everyone on the board. So yes, that is a long set, and yes, your comments are needed, and it's a big complex matter. The thing is 9 pages long or something. The reason it was done in that manner was so that everyone on this board would have the time from Wednesday to Monday to deal with, to edit them. But you're right, for the public, it's a different matter. It presents something which clearly isn't finished, I agree. So that was, as you say, it was an unusual set, long set. It isn't my practice it won't be my practice to post them before you 12 get the chance to look at them. That was an exception, but in the future, let's get them early. We'll put them on OneDrive, and then you all have your first review of them, and your edits are needed before we post them. I agree.
I just question whether they should stay posted or not, because they have not been vetted properly, and they're now up for the public to review and to believe.
Sure, but they're not final.
So I'm wondering if they should be removed from the website.
I wouldn't remove them. In my opinion, they're a draft, and we 12 haven't edited them, but they have been posted.
They're also subject to approval. So, again, they are draft and they are posted as draft. And yes, it may have not been the norm, but typically you are just supposed to post meetings as a draft and then have the body approve them. And, we haven't necessarily, well, I'm not going to say anything else.
It's just that draft without any actioned minutes will be used as if they are the actual minutes. And it's an important meeting. I don't agree in this case. I don't believe those minutes should be posted. People can watch the 10-hour Zoom meeting if they need to see it, if we don't have another vehicle of identifying the actual actions. But there's information missing in there. So I just, in this particular case, I don't think it's fair to the rest of the committee to have those meetings posted on the website as being accurate information of the meeting.
Ms. Moriarty had her hand up. Ms. Erickson.
Yes, I would like to move the minutes of the March 16th meeting. I think those are perfectly fine with Beth's most recent change. And I would like to move to postpone the balance of the minutes. I'm not going to read all the dates, but I do have a particular concern on the April 27th. I know we are required to post our votes within a certain period of time. I think that, having these minutes posted may fulfill that requirement, even though they're in draft form. But there is one particular motion on the senior center that I think is just factually incorrect, as one example. So I am concerned about leaving those up when RTM committees and districts will be evaluating the budget. They may look to these minutes, they may not, I don't know. But with respect to that particular item, I am concerned that it's flipped. I think the way it's worded is a little funky.
Mr. Chair,
Hold on. I have a motion by Ms. Erickson to approve the March 16th minutes and to postpone the other 5 sets of minutes that are on our agenda. Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Drake. Discussion on the motion. Okay.
Well, no, wait a second. I wanted to talk and I'm looking for my raising hand.
Okay.
So-
On the motion before us.
Yes, we're separating this. We're referring to Ms. Crumick's comments and so forth. I'm not familiar with what they are. I would prefer to include this with the other 5 as was proposed in Mr. Drake's original motion, and therefore I will be voting against this motion.
Further discussion, Ms. Crumick?
Yeah, all I did was clarify a proper spelling, and these were not substantive changes. They were just a correction to a word. So I don't think they need to be held over a whole month for, if I can find my notes.
Okay, further?
They were not worthy of putting off. It was, I'm sorry, on the 3/16, the March 16th, I changed, my vote was on the treasurer's report was an abstention, not an opposed. So that's all I changed.
Got it. Okay. All right. I'm going to call it the Erickson motion on the minutes. Mr. Drake, can you do a roll call on this? Because I don't think we have a unanimous vote, so.
Sure. So this motion by Ms. Erickson is to approve the March 16th minutes with the edit that Ms. Crumick just said and defer the other 5. Ms. Cruiser,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Sorry, yes.
Ms. Crumick,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkenton,
No.
Mr. Mason.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Fasliotis,
Yes.
Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Deuce,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
That passes 11-1.
Okay. Again, thank you, everyone. I'll get back on those dates as soon as I can. We also have to work on the art. We have a very short window here. I'm sorry to add these comments.
Mike, did you take a vote on the rest of the?
That motion was to approve March
I'm
16th,
sorry.
postpone all the others.
Okay, I'm sorry. I missed that last part.
No, that was inclusive. Again, the RTM, we have next week off, and then the RTM begins their process again.
Before we move off of minutes, I'd like to ask again for Mr. Drake to have the subject to approval 427 minutes removed from the website. Otherwise, I'd like to make a motion to that effect.
Okay. Your motion, please make your motion, because we have to have the votes, right?
Well, the votes can be, there are other ways of communicating the votes. I actually have a complete chart on the votes. I've had it for 3 weeks now, which can be posted, but the minutes as presented don't reflect the issue of the meeting. So I think that those minutes, we haven't met the requirement, if there is a other requirement before, but I would like to make the motion to remove the subject to approval minutes of the April 27th meeting.
I need a second.
I second.
Seconded by Mr. Weisbrod. Discussion on the motion?
Yeah, if I could, I think it would be a good gesture on Bill's part to, stick with the norms, as Karen is saying correctly. Let's please stick with the norms. And, this is unfortunate that it should come to a vote. I think it would be preferable if, Bill would have voluntarily say, look, let's take it down until we have, we're going to review this anyway. And I think it's the right thing to do. I would really prefer to see it done in that fashion rather than by vote. So would request that he consider that.
I don't think this is really up to me alone. I think this is what the board decides to do. My orientation was one of full disclosure. It's clear that subject to approval minutes are a draft, always subject to that, to subsequent modification. And so the judgment I think we're all making is there's 9 pages of minutes here. No doubt there's things that deserve to be modified in parts of those 9 pages. But when you weigh the decision of, shall I disclose 9 pages of draft minutes to our community so they can understand one of about 50 votes with the risk that 1 or 2 of them is misstated or others are misstated? Or shall I just not disclose for now? I think our orientation with the deadlines looming and the complexity of a long meeting was to put them out there subject to change. So I think subtracting information from the public's view is not the path I would recommend. These are all subject to review by Ms. Moriarty and everybody else. So let's openly examine them, knowing that the changes will be done.
Ms. Faslotis has her hand up.
I don't know under FOIA whether we can unring the bell, but I would suggest that before we take any action that the town attorney be asked as to whether or not we can, and I'm just going to say unring the bell, if you will. Again, I'm of the opinion that it's subject to approval so that there can be changes, substantive or not. I agree that perhaps they shouldn't have been posted before review. They are there now, but I would feel more comfortable with the town attorney opining as to whether or not you can take down something that is clearly FOIA-able anyway, if somebody really wanted to see them.
Then
Mr. Raymer's hand is up.
Mr. Who?
Mr. Raymer, you.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure you were calling on me. Yeah, I'm just looking at FOIA and noting that although we're supposed to have minutes available within 7 days of the meeting, it's explicit that we're not obliged to have them on a website. I don't. So I think posting them on the website is a gratuitous act on our part, and I don't think we need an opinion from the town attorney as to whether or not we control what's up on the website or what's not, or whether having posted something on a website commits us to do it forever after. By the way, I recall that when the parking services internal audit was done, it was posted, and then as we came up to election time, it was taken down off the website. So clearly we've gone through the exercise of posting and unposting things before when it suited us. I'd support the motion that these minutes be taken off the website, held available through FOIA or the like, but not posted on the website.
Okay, Ms. Erickson, followed by Mr. Deuce.
Yeah, I mean, I would support the motion to remove the minutes. I already mentioned one factual issue with the minutes. I also think they're incomplete. And I would hate to do this, but I don't think we can hold over the minutes till our next regular meeting. It would be after the vote of the RTM and all the committee deliberations. I would suggest that in order to get this right, we should have a special meeting, which no one wants to do for minutes, but I think it's important to have an accurate record. If you're looking at the meeting to figure out where our votes were, The amendments are not included. There's a reference to go to the Zoom meeting for the amendments, which as a practical matter is really would be very difficult for a member of the public or the RTM to do. So I think personally there's enough issues with the minutes that you should either address it before the RTM deliberates on the budget, or we should take them down. I think they would lead to confusion. Thank you.
Mr. Deuce?
Could I make an amendment to the motion that we remove this set of minutes subject to getting prior approval from town council? Remove temporarily, that is, of course.
We normally don't have motions to amend on top of a motion. Not exactly sure what this procedural motion is. My challenge is, what are we going to replace if we pull this down? I need to see what we're replacing it with. That's my challenge right off the bat. FOI is, I'm of the opinion I need to know what we're going to put up. I mean, we just can't take them down. We need to have a replacement document. With that, I've sat here we have several minutes backed up, not only at the full BET level, but at a committee level. And I think we should, I think Ms. Erickson's, I don't want to call a special meeting either, but we are behind, and these minutes are important to some members of the RTM's deliberations and decisions they make. Ms. Vassilotis was up, then Mr. Raymer, then Ms. Krummick.
And I might make a suggestion as a compromise that the comments be given to the town clerk within the next 24 or 48 hours, and that the stop, Simon, and that we make the appropriate changes and then repost them within 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever we agree to. And if it means taking them down temporarily with a note saying they'll be coming back soon, that's fine. But at least then we would have subject to approval before our next meeting.
I think that is a very perceptive and good idea. If it suits all 12 of us, if you want to say, pick a date, in 2 days or 4 days or whatever date you all choose, if you give me, if you make the edits you want to make, Ms. Moriarty and others, on the OneDrive version, by a certain date, I'll engage to turn them around in 2 days and repost them, like Karen suggested. And therefore, if you set for yourselves a sufficiently early date, you'll have a revised set posted sub to app ahead of the RTM meeting. Good idea.
I have Mr. Raymer next, followed by Ms. Hess, but Mr. Drake's comments, I think, were directly pushed at Ms. Moriarty's motion. Would you like to respond to that, Ms. Moriarty, first?
No, I'll let other people speak and we can see the merits of it. I think in general, as a concept, I think that's fine. It's very similar to Ms. Erickson's motion, which is to call a special meeting to act and get them up there as well. But if a better set or a more complete set on the subject to release on those minutes can be executed this week, I think that's a better outcome, assuming today's version is removed until we've completed that work.
Mr. Raymer?
I was only going to read the language. I was going from recollection before. I'm quoting from the language of 1-225 subsection A, which reads in part, no public agency of a political subdivision of the state shall be required to post such minutes on an internet website by statute. We just don't have the obligation. I don't mind what's being proposed here. I just want to be specific about the provision in the statute.
So before I call Ms. Sessa, I would ask what the governor's order might have to do with that, because people can't see them in the public forum, say the town hall. That's some of the waivers that we have on public hearings and public operations are covered in the governor's directive that we're working on. So I'm not offering you an answer. I'm just saying if they're not posted on a website, we can't post them at a civic center. We can't post them in town hall. They're not in a place where the public can get to them either way, as draft or subject to release either way. Ms. Hess.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with Karen's suggestion. I think that's the best way to deal with this. We could take it down, I don't know, 1 to 2 days, give people the opportunity, and let's try to get a better draft that people are comfortable with within 2 days' time. I don't think we need a special meeting, but I liked that idea and could support that.
Ms. Tarkington?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. And then I guess all of this also relates to when they'll be put up on OneDrive so that we can get to it, fairly quickly.
Yeah, I was just going to add it. They haven't been on OneDrive. We've never had the opportunity to put anything in. They are very complicated. Having done them last year, I can tell you it takes a little bit of time. I would ask that Mr. Drake take it till maybe Thursday or Friday of this week and give us all an opportunity to put in changes, because they are complicated. We have to go back. Some people may want to go back to the tape and actually listen to them. So I would say take them down now and put a new setup Friday. If you could ask for maybe a Thursday afternoon deadline, but give people time because they haven't even been up on OneDrive yet.
Thank you. Ms. Moriarty?
Yes, I'm willing to withdraw my motion. I don't think we need to actually take the vote. I think the current plan can work. We can set the deadlines, whether it's, maybe by Thursday of this week, to submit all potential changes to that subject to approval meeting minutes once Bill distributes them to us in OneDrive format.
So we have a consensus. Mr. Drake, your hand is up.
Just thanks. This is very helpful, everybody. I'll put them on OneDrive in a couple hours. You'll have them right away. And you want to set for yourselves, if you circle back, you all pick a date and say you'll circle back with comments by Wednesday or Thursday, whatever date you pick. 24 hours from then, I will repost. Is that suitable? Pick a date for your own deadline.
I think Thursday was proposed, and I think that's fine. By close of business on Thursday, any other comments after that would not be accepted.
And Bill, you're going to have Elaine take them down off the website, right?
If you all want them off, I'll take them off. What's the consensus?
Yes.
I think
Yes.
It's
So
fine.
So let's get back to the clear agreement world. Let's talk about Thursday at 3:00. Okay, as the deadline, because that gives me
Yep, that's fine.
1 hour to call for a special meeting for Friday afternoon if we're not going to find it.
Well, we don't need a special meeting, Mike. I think I think that if everybody has comments in by Thursday at 3, the changes can be made and posted on Friday, and then we can take it up at our next meeting.
Okay.
So comments by 3 p.m. on the 21st, and I'll regurgitate those into a newly posted version, which will be posted on the 22nd, Friday. Is that okay?
Yes.
And take down the ones, take the others down.
Correct.
Tarkington, your hand was up.
Now. Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that the version that's going to be posted in OneDrive will be the version that incorporates Ms. Moriarty's comments, and then
No, it won't
from
be.
there.
No, it won't be. It'll be what's posted in your package in ink on paper, posted for everyone's comments so that Ms. Moriarty's comments can be seen as well as yours and everybody else's.
We'll update them.
Yep, that's exactly right. Okay, further discussion on minutes. Okay, can I get a motion we adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll talk to you later in the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you.